Johnny Smoley and Jack Doherty, both people who should be in jail, but for whatever reason they're not. Let's see what is going on with when devs care about DEI than making good games.
Hey guys, hope you've had a wonderful weekend. And we've got hilarious news here to start the week. So, do you remember that GDC thing, the Game Developers Conference? We talked about that fairly recently because there was this Canadian dev who was talking about how he's supposed to attend GDC and he wants to, but he's afraid to come to the USA. He thinks he's going to get like detained or something for being Canadian. He's recommending like other Canadian devs to not go to the USA and a bunch of other like crazy stuff. He even said like if you do go to the USA, you should wipe your phone first. But anyways, that was just an example of the other week when we were talking about GDC. We also talked about it last year because it was going viral for this event they had going on there where a bunch of game devs were getting together to scream. Yeah, to scream like a bunch of weirdo freaks over the state of the games industry. You've
Wait,
probably
the
seen this
GDC
clip.
screaming
I'm only going
event
to play
again?
like literally 2 seconds of it for the people
Are
out
they
there who
gonna
haven't
do it
seen this
again?
yet, because yeah, I'm not exaggerating. Like that's literally what happened. So here's 2 seconds of it. Just know that it went on for like a minute though, but I'm not going to put us all through a full minute of this, or even more than like 2 seconds of it. Grown adults acting like that, man. It's the world coming to. Anyways, that's just some context to the GDC. Now, onto the funny part. Kotaku reports no one was around to collect Life is Strange Double Exposures Award for social impact following layoffs. So, what is the Social Impact Award? Well, let's take a look. Social Impact Award. Finalists will be recognized for a game that advances equality, justice, intersectionality, and or sustainability and works to positively impact the lives of its players in a meaningful way. My gosh, that sounds pompous and obnoxious. Bunch of fake people trying to act like they're the most morally virtuous ones out there. It's really funny how they're trying to prop this game up. Like, according to their own award, they're basically trying to say that this game makes the world a better place. But even on the Life is Strange subreddit, their top posts like
Video
this.
games
No
make the
spoilers,
world a
double
better
exposure is
place.
bad and not worth your money or time. The fact is, this game is utterly lifeless. The ambience is dead, the vibe is flat, the character dynamics are uninteresting and lack any worthwhile thematics. The music doesn't stick in my head like they did for the prior games, and this repetition of who did it mystery once again has grown tiresome and will in all likelihood never match the high of the original game. A top response reading. In 30 minutes of play, bowling with LGBT championship, gay bar, lesbian attendant, friend Moses, gay, lesbian Gwen, forced to hit on the lesbian attendant and ask her out. I don't particularly care about it, even Moses seems to be a very charismatic character, and I'm currently curious about the character's development, but currently the social aspect of the game seems like a satire made by South Park or something someone would see in The Boys. Look, we have 95% LGBT content present. I hope they delve deeper into the plot, the character, and the social environment, and not just raise flags of representation without any meaning, just to say it's there. Yep, sounds like complete soulless corpo DEI slop. Really trying to pad those ESG metrics. Over on Steam, as of recording, the game currently has a mixed review score, and recent reviews going all the way down to 56%. Let's also take note of how hilarious it is that the commenter over on Reddit said the social aspect of the game seems like satire. And then we actually had the GDC awarding this game the Social Impact Award. The jokes really just write themselves. And in this case, even more so, because once again, the devs were laid off. No one could even collect that award anyways. Although Kotaku did eventually say, Balau confirmed that members of the development team who were attending GDC separately did eventually manage to go collect the award. But for fans and others in the industry, it's a grimly ironic reminder of the current precarious state of the game industry, especially for story-driven adventure games, a once popular genre that struggled to find sustainable success in recent years. As always, these sort of people never take accountability for their own mistakes. Oh, hey, we didn't make mistakes on this game. We couldn't have made it better. No, it's just the state of the industry. That's why the game didn't do well. They write the most modern audience DI-infected slop possible. The game flops, and they have no self-reflection at all. Then their journalist buddies of theirs write stuff like this, trying to manipulate the narrative. Lastly, we'll take a look at this section that elaborates on the layoffs, saying, Deck9 ended up laying off a number of staff following the release, including many who worked on Double Exposure's narrative team. It was the third mass layoff at the studio in 2 years. Weak sales reportedly led to a large loss for publisher Square Enix, which owns the series. It's unclear what Life is Strange's future is at the moment, but Deck9 ended Double Exposure with a plan for what came next. Okay, you know what? I'll read that next part. This is where the article ends. No matter what anyone thinks about certain creative calls that were made for Double Exposure, I think it's important that people understand that they are all made with intent. We thought long and hard about every one of them, and have done our best to basically plant seeds, game director John Stouter said in November. That ending is just to say that we have a future plan. There's not a whole lot more I can say than that. This is all heading somewhere, should folks want more after Double Exposure. Now we'll take a look at some public reception for this news. Over on our PC Gaming, post titled, "We all got laid off," says former Deck9 narrative designer after no one was around to pick up Life is Strange Double Exposure's GDC Awards win, and posting an article about that from PC Gamer. Getting top responses like this: "I'm genuinely tired of this poor game devs who are unjustly laid off narrative. In some cases it applies, but in most it's in response to bad games that failed. Believe it or not, there are consequences for not doing your job well. That being said, the heads of these companies making seven figures often dodge these same repercussions. That's unfortunately kind of America in a nutshell right now. Looking at you, Andrew Wilson." Interestingly, the OP would post here saying, "Why is life in the games industry so bleak right now? I'm closing to releasing my own indie game, and I'm terrified it might all collapse. Every year seems to be getting worse." They got 13 upvotes, and the reason I point that out is because this response got 63. Let's read it. It says, "Lots of games bombing due to lacking quality or badly misreading their target audience. This is helped along by consumers having a lot of solid choices available to them, so there's no real need to settle for something mediocre. I don't think that the market is really contracting or anything like that. Good games continue to make boatloads of cash. But for example, this game has mediocre reviews and a fairly bad maximum concurrent player count on Steam. It just plain wasn't well received by general audiences, and didn't do well commercially as a result." And then we got this exchange. "Game was terrible. No one bought it. Not complicated to figure out why the devs were laid off. What the heck even is a social impact award? What impact did a failed game no one played make? Is it just wishful thinking? Did they mean it as, we wish this game had made an impact? It hit all the social checkboxes, and that's it. Perhaps the real social impact is people feeling bad for the developers that got laid off and couldn't accept the award. Performance art." The most upvoted comment in that thread reading, "The Kotaku headline from a couple days ago was way funnier," because once again the article in this post was from PC Gamer. He goes on to quote that Kotaku article, which we've read multiple times already, but one more time. "No one was around to collect Life is Strange Double Exposure's award for social impact following layoffs," saying The Onion couldn't come up with comedy gold like that. Then there's a deleted comment, someone saying Double Exposure wasn't a remaster though, and they got a response that says, "And it didn't have any social impact either." However, it looks like this commenter wasn't so happy with the other discourse going on here. Their comment saying, "In this thread, the most terminally online, cynical, ignorant, capital G gamers Reddit has on its platform. Game was terrible. Y'all are really out here making a difference." And that's where we'll leave it for this one. As mentioned earlier, please consider
60.
letting me know what you think about this news in the comments.
No one
If you
liked your
enjoyed the
comment.
coverage,
Won't
also
care.
consider liking and or subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one.
Hero, hey.
Today, you are going to learn about how a company has fallen to pieces. And
Uh-oh.
it's one the name of which you may not have heard.
Which
it's
one?
called Thunderful, but hundreds of jobs are gone, and you might recognize at least some of the games, like the entire SteamWorld series. You've probably seen those on Steam, certainly on Game Pass, Planet of Lana, Viewfinder, many other games. Basically always indie-scale games with heart. But this is obviously not a story about those games. This is a story about a line that must go up. Now, we say that phrase a lot, sometimes it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but just literally take a look at this line. This is not a line that's been going up. And this line is the stock price for Thunderful Group, and it's not gone up in 5 years. It's actually flatlining right now, and as it flatlines, the business behind it is falling to pieces. Hundreds of layoffs, vaults of intellectual property stuffed away unused. This is an Embracer Group tier disaster that has not yet hit the mainstream. You get to find out about the story today. And just like with Embracer, it is driven by ambition. An ambition to bring together indie teams and punch above their weight and make the line go up in the process. It did not work, so let's investigate. We've also got to face a sad truth. If you have slacked on canceling your subscriptions, come to the front of the class, because we're going to solve that with Rocket Money. They're today's sponsor, and they make solving that problem so easy. And you can even get started for free today at rocketmoney.com/BellyerNews. Okay, let's talk subs. Basically, Rocket Money will securely and safely identify recurring charges for you. And then all you do is you just cancel them in a few taps on their UI. They've put in the work to make it smooth and easy. So if it's a chore you've been putting off, well, now's the time, and they'll make it easy. They also do a lot more. As an example, helping you with bill negotiation. Simply upload your bill, and they'll be able to help. And for a cracked example, right? My internet recently went to its off-contract price. I had to deal with that, and I negotiated a speed upgrade, and I also halved my monthly bill. That's the kind of thing you can do, and they can help you do it. But returning to the subscription front, they've actually canceled over $500 million of subscriptions. They've helped save their customers up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Rocket Money has other great tools to help you budget. So if you want to spend less and save more, you can join the over 5 million Rocket Money members today using rocketmoney.com/BellyerNews, or just clicking my link down below. You can start for free and unlock more features premium. And to remind you, that's rocketmoney.com/BellyerNews. We've chosen Thunderful's most recent victim as the entry point to today's video because it really is just a good encapsulation of everything. So this game is called Rainbreaker, right? It's a narrative roguelite action game, and you can probably see some Hades inspirations. It's from an award-winning studio called Fizbin. It released March 18th, and just 2 weeks before that, the studio announced its closure.
Ouch.
They're far from the first victim of Thunderful, and I say victim because they were closed by Thunderful. It wasn't just a publishing agreement. Thunderful had, in fact, acquired the studio. Now, on paper, this should have been a perfect pairing, right? Thunderful had published one of Fizbin's games before, and of course Thunderful, because they're a wider group, they would have the resources to provide Fizbin with security in a fluctuating market, so the short-term cash flow doesn't mean they go to zero. That's the type of thing where an acquisition is supposed to be a value add. And sure, when you're acquired, you cede some control, but game finances are screwed. You can see why you would sell your company to keep the lights on, to get the resources you need. But plans change. Thunderful certainly did. Barely a year after purchasing Fizbin, Thunderful decided that they just didn't want to make games internally anymore. Fizbin's devs were not needed, and Thunderful would not fund another project. It's not like they went away purely because of what they cost or anything like that. No, it was a strategic move made by the people who acquired them, and because of that, rip Fizbin, the line had to go up. The line exists because, well, that's their public stock price. Of course, that means that they needed to list their stock publicly, and Thunderful listed themselves on the First North Premier Exchange in December 2020. The stock sale raised 1.3 billion Swedish kroner, which is about $155 million. That was exactly what they forecasted for their IPO, which means initial public offer. And that was all going to plan. Amazing! 155 mil. And of course, it was late 2020. That's when games looked to be an exceptional investment. Lockdowns had people stuck indoors. Hell, the lockdown effect had World of Warcraft's worst expansion also be its fastest selling one. And as a lot of people who bought into pandemic hype stocks kind of would find out, a lot of that ended up being a bubble. But of course, at the time, what was happening is investors were betting on a fundamental societal change that would have people at home playing games, that they would habituate to that over lockdown periods, and then keep on doing it with game spending rising and rising and rising. So everyone was piling into pandemic stocks, and our industry benefited in the short term, but certainly not in the medium or long term. Thunderful then ended up with a whole bunch of money raised via this stock offering. And that's because investors would look at Thunderful and see a consistent group of developers with a strong plan. But of course, you know what they say about plans coming into contact with the enemy. So, just before the IPO, the CEO of the group spoke to the press. His words have not aged well. Not at all. I'll quote him. I think our employees are worried that they're going to screw up, but I think we've been very gentle about this, trying to explain to everyone that it's not a dangerous thing. We're ready for this now, and we're prepared for what it entails in terms of responsibility. If this was a TV show, you would say the writers are way too on the nose. That's literally what he said. So now we get to talk about what he did and how wrong he was about everything he said. Everything. It's now time to burn that $155 million. So what happened next was pretty much what always happens after an IPO. Thunderful started expanding, and they did it rapidly. Their first purchase was a developer and a publisher called Head Up Games. They're the people, by the way, who did Bridge Constructor. Well, this is kind of fun. They cost 11 million euros at the time. Remember that figure because it's actually one of the worst deals that Thunderful would make. Over the next 2 years, they bought 4 more studios, including Fizbin, but oh no, games were not enough. Absolutely not. Thunderful wanted to be self-sufficient, and that meant more than just video games. So they did the obvious. They paid 115 grand for a film production company, which is obviously not a lot of money. 115 grand versus 155 million raised, but man, I think it was still putting the cart before the horse. Granted, it's easy for me to say that in hindsight. Anyway, even if you do have game studios and a production company, you're still going to have a problem. Those studios can only make video games so fast. Not fast enough to make the line go up. And that is why they acquired UK consultancy group Robot Teddy, and they set up 2 grassroots indie game funds. But that still wasn't enough. No game empire is complete without loads of mobile games. So what they did is they acquired a mobile studio and they signed Super Meat Boy Forever. Certainly another banger move in a chain of executing pure business. You know, cross-functional teams, synergy, pursuing blue sky opportunities. I mean, if that does not put Coke in the table, I don't know what will. But speaking of lines, well, the line would go down. Not to shock you, but the whole sugar rush of our last segment was not really healthy for them in the long run. Rather shockingly, all was not well in the C-suite of Thunderful. For the whole of 2021, Thunderful actually made the line go up. Well done, lads. Relatively solid profit growth and good revenue increases. And that really validated that the IPO and the spending were very sensible things. Then 2022 hit. Games like The Gunk simply did not meet their sales targets. By August 2022, the CEO had stepped down and they actually reported a $2 million loss for the year's first half. And when they did, they blamed weaker than expected game performances. But in reality, right, the biggest factor was a quirk of how Thunderful was formed in 2019. So get a load of this. It's a bit spicy, it's a bit weird. The SteamWorld developers at Image & Form and the indie team at Zoink were each 25% of the original Thunderful group. The remaining 50%, well, that was their joint shareholder, Bergsala. Now, Bergsala were not a game developer. They were a publisher, but they weren't just any publisher. They were also Nintendo's official Nordic distributor.
There's like 3 different hands.
And that would matter. It meant that Thunderful's financial performance was only partially tied to their internal developments or even games that they published. If they had a first-party Nintendo game to distribute, they would almost certainly generate a big old pile of cash. But if the distribution side of the business underperformed, while, say, games succeeded, an underperformance could offset the games. They would not necessarily balance out. And if both underperformed, bad news. Existentially bad news. By autumn 2023, they had a new CEO who hailed from Ubisoft Massive, and he acted quickly. Management was shuffled, external talent was acquired, but results were not acquired. We all know what that would mean. Perhaps especially when you've got a new CEO, right? New! Not emotionally tied to the rank-and-file workers. Not emotionally tied to the stupid decisions that past leaders made. So it's no surprise they laid off 20% of their headcount in January 2024. That was 75 people. It was a gambit to cut costs by $9 million. But it was not enough. Oh no, cash flows were still negative, targets were missed, and that led to sales. As an example, the entire Bergsala distribution arm that I just talked about was sold from the group to its leadership. Which, by the way, stuff like that can definitely be sus when it can be sus, but that's a different story. And of course, the story that they projected was that Thunderful was now a pure play games company. That was a quote, a pure play games company. One that was obviously fucked, so more sales would follow, and they were brutal. Stage Clear was shut, Jump Ship was sold back to its founder, and Head Up was sold back to its management for €500,000. Remember earlier in this video I said to remember a certain €11 million number? Yeah, they acquired that for 11 million and they sold it for 500,000. Not a good return. And to top off what was an absolutely horrible year, another
Whoopsies.
100 people got the axe November 2024 in an attempt to save 8 million. After all that, we have to ask, what is the value in Thunderful anymore? Why does it exist? Well, Thunderful's most persistent success was the SteamWorld series. Now, though, almost no one who created those games works there, and according to Thunderful, most of the development staff are, gone, because they're moving away from internal development. Now, remember when the CEO said the staff were worried that they, the staff, would screw up the IPO? How do his words ring now? Because the staff are obviously not to blame here. They signed up to make games. Leadership across the company is who wanted a powerhouse of games production with investment, development, publishing, distribution, film and television, transmedia, narrative, everything. That's what leadership wanted, not the staff. They had this heady, insane promise that just so happened to coincide with a market that was way too hot, and the company was just flooded with public cash. People wanted to believe, not just because it's a good story, but because believing would mean you'll make a hell of a lot of money. But we can see that leadership were wrong. The CEO, when he said all of those things to the press, was wrong. They were not ready for this, despite their promises. They actually could not do better, and they fell apart the second their ambition was tested. But here's the thing. This is a story that we have seen before. I don't know, I guess. Is this channel just going to devolve into eternal recurrence? Who knows? But here's the point. Leadership gets a taste of expansion and then they lose their minds. On this very channel, we have covered that with Phoenix Labs, with Warner Brothers, even with BioWare. Do they grow too fast and outside of their corporate skill sets? Now look, I am not anti-ambition. I'm pro-ambition. It needs to be matched with responsibility all the way up and down and everywhere in the chain. And it seems to be never the C-suite who ends up paying, and Thunderful is a perfect example. Leadership will take their freshly pruned company, now they've got rid of all those pesky game developers, and it'll go in its new direction, collecting paychecks from things that they have published in the past. Because, yeah, all those revenues are still coming into the company. Now they've cut all those costs, they can just collect the revenues. Maybe they'll have IP to license, they'll have the odd game to publish. Of course, this is at the cost of us not getting new video games, of staff losing jobs, and broadly speaking, the industry falling apart. Thunderful's fall serves as a rapid and transparent example.
Yeah,
of
it kind of
exactly
sounds like
what has
Ubisoft
happened
right
all across
now.
the industry. And if you want to crank the scale up a few orders of magnitude and learn how WB Games pulled off its worst decade ever,
Fucking Ubisoft
watch this
is
video
going
next.
down the stinker right now. Because of what they've been doing. We'll see how they hold up. Because they're like they're on a lifeboat. Right? Ubisoft are on a lifeboat. Let's take a look at this. This one looks like there's a filter versus this one. Or at least the filters on this one are more subtle versus this one. This one seems like there's a lot of filters. Yeah, you can see the you can see his breath under the cold weather. You can't see hers. Oh my god. So pretty. Let's speed this up a little bit.
Hi there.
I don't know. I think I still like Red Dead 2 better. Yeah, so you can see the actual muscles moving. Ah, my nose.
Look out!
Look out!
Anything? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Arthur has more.
Where? You cut open my father. You left him to suffer, to die in pain.
It's what you and your kind deserve.
You borrowed money from my business partner, Herr Strauss. You owe him, you took the money. He wants it back, what's not to understand? Where's our money?
I don't have it.
Sell your place.
We already owe more than it's worth.
Then sell your wife, or your family, or something. We ain't your idea of charity. Is that clear?
Thomas!
Okay.
You bastard!
Huh. Yoink. Uh.
？I need your bow, please.
大事に使っておくれ。
He literally just took this woman's boat and you're... Jeez, that's fucked up. Oh, fucking set himself on fire. Wasted. I don't think you can kill yourself with that. Oh, no, you can. Oh, wow. Oh, headshot. Aww. There's no, it's invisible arrows. What the fuck? God damn. The ragdoll. Holy shit. Oh! It's a fucking pincushion now. Yeah. Oh. Oh, that's unfun now. Yeah, the arrows actually stay in the they're actually, there's actual physics behind the arrows. Oh, there it goes. Wait, why was it like that though? What? Hunting is not allowed? No. What? Wait. No hunting, but you can fuck up shrines and stuff? Like, what? Huh? Huh. Oh, then again, Red Dead Redemption 2 is just a different mechanic. You're not, it looks like you're not even shooting the tree. What the fuck? Bang, bang, bang. Oh, there's no penetration. It doesn't go through it. It's just... That's, Oh, you can actually hear it. How come on wood it's okay, but on the other, or yeah, for some reason in this, sometimes it's okay and the other times it's not okay. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah. Just push it.
Are you crazy? What's a fella gotta do for a quiet life?
The ragdoll physics in fucking Red Dead Redemption are better. God damn it. Whoa, that dude went flying. What the fuck happened? Wait, what?
Strawberry.
Oh. Oh yeah, and this game fighting is more dynamic. Shit!
Keeping the peace, are you? Hey, boy.
Hey, boy.
Kind creature.
You can pet cats? Oh my god.
Hey, cat. Hi there, kitty.
Oh, shoot. Cat.
Hey, kitty.
I mean, regardless, even though I like Red Dead Redemption 2 better, there's still some good scenery looks. Oh. Yeah, I think I like, yeah, the waterfall here. Versus this. Yeah, I like this one better. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is just a bit better. Just a bit better. Assassin's Creed's is lacking.
It's all come down to this. Nearly 20,000 jobs and the fate of an entire company rest on Assassin's Creed Shadows. The stakes have quite literally never been higher, and this is something that could change the face of the games industry forever.
Yep.
And you may hear that and think, wow, that is insane hyperbole. It's
No.
actually not. I'm not joking. You see,
No, yeah,
Ubisoft
it's
CEO
not
and his family
hyperbole
are
at all.
locked in a battle for control of the company. A group of investors want them out, but CEO Yves Guillemot could cut a deal with the likes of Tencent, again, to save his skin. And that means that if Shadows is a wash, both Tencent and that group of rebelling investors will have immense leverage over Yves, which is pretty crazy. But at least for now, he can breathe a sigh of release. But he's not free yet, and Ubisoft very literally might still split in two. Now, one thing it's fair to say about the Assassins is they kind of nailed their ADC, and the brand that I love and use every day, Ridge, is sponsoring today's video. And actually right now,
Ridge
it's
Wallet.
their once-a-year anniversary sale. It's up to 40% off, so if you've been on the fence, well, then get off it and click my link below. Now, here's my favorite, and it's the leather key case. I could not resist swapping over from my past key case, because man, the leather's so good. It's very thick, it's absolutely gorgeous, it's built like a truck, and of course, it's the Ridge key case, so it's slim, it's light, it's durable, it holds up to 6 keys, and it keeps them under the perfect amount of tension, which means no key jangle. I hate key jangle. And also, right, I've got my keys all, in an order and an orientation that means that whenever I come upon a door, I always select the right key. And that is a really small thing, but you know what? It adds up. It's just nice every day. And of course, you probably do know Ridge from the Ridge wallets, right? And the Ridge wallets are simply awesome. Of course, tech-wise, they're also good for MagSafe and AirTags, if that's your thing. And man, on colors and finishes, they, well, I mean, Basecamp Orange is basically one of my favorite colors. I'm very weak to these. And also, this is the Minimal Ridge Light, which, yeah, super minimal for your cards. Absolutely awesome. Now, up to 40% off, 99-day money-back guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. So really, it's quite a no-brainer to upgrade your EDC today with my link. I'm seriously doing a spot of gift buying, like in advance during sales. Man, it's actually quite the quality of life hack for your year. So check out my link down below. With that said, let's get into the video. First off, it's clear that at least from their perspective, they've left nothing to chance here because they know they're under pressure. Over the last few months, right, they are back on Steam. They removed advanced access as a pre-order bonus, which, by the way, is pretty amazing because fuck that. They've also delayed Shadows twice, once for polish, another likely to dodge Monster Hunter. And Ubisoft also knows that any drama will go viral, so they actually responded to the Japanese politicians who conflated Shadows with real-life vandalism. Basically, Ubisoft have immediately patched shrine locations to remove asset physics, which basically just means viral clips will no longer be a thing. And you can see how for Ubi, this is no chances being taken. I mean, hell, review copies even went out 3 times earlier than with Outlaws. They gave everyone basically streamer copies. It's kind of crazy. And even in marketing terms, they've went pretty hard. Like, there's even a whole commercial spoof from Ubisoft Brazil. So that's a lot of trying. And internally, some insiders leaking out to the press have said that staff pushed very hard for all of this. Here's a quote. The teams have worked like never before to finish it. They really needed the extra month. There are senior employees who worked every day to complete it. It was pretty crazy. And those same insiders have also suggested that at least in Ubisoft Quebec, there is fairly high enthusiasm for this game. Basically, all they have to do to succeed, in their own terms, would be to sell like Odyssey. So let's see how they've actually done and check in with the early numbers. By the numbers, they've beaten Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So by Sunday, Ubisoft were reporting that Shadows had 2 million players, and according to data from both Video Games Chronicle and Ubisoft data that's been seen by Insider Gaming, Shadows is now the 2nd biggest launch that the franchise has ever had. Now, you may know Insider Gaming from their absolute torrent of accurate and sometimes very uncomfortable for Ubisoft leaks, especially in the game X-Defiant. So honestly, I would take what they say they've seen as being fairly credible. Now, breaking those numbers down, we also see a bit of a trend, and it's a sort of neat one. So number 1, this was Ubisoft's largest PlayStation launch, which is hardly a surprise, but VGC reported 27% of total activations being on PC, and according to them, the return to Steam on day 1 has played a, quote, significant role, which honestly does just kind of reinforce what we already knew. If you forego Gabe, you do so at your absolute peril. And unsurprisingly, Shadows had the highest launch concurrence of any Assassin's Creed in Steam, but I think that was always going to happen because, well, it's a simultaneous launch.
Oh yeah, Odyssey. Yeah, that was the one.
In short, this has been a good day for Ubisoft, but it was not actually the top Assassin's Creed launch. That still is Valhalla, but there's a fairly obvious reason why. Valhalla launched peak pandemic November 2020. So yeah, it was basically bound to do really well at the start. But there's an even more crazy stat, and that stat is that Shadows has been able to achieve these player numbers without launching on Stadia. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, to the reviews, critics and audiences are shockingly aligned here. OpenCritics rating is 82, 82% also recommend, and that is actually important because the recommendation is a simple yes/no, meaning it is just like a Steam review. The Steam reviews are 81%. That's a hell of a lot of alignment, and there's not even a large discrepancy in the regional reviews. So even the normally far more harsh Chinese user scores are trending to 75%. There are Japanese reviews, but it's a really tiny sample size. Japan PC for big games like this isn't really as much of a thing, but still, those are at 73. That is a touch more negative than the other ones, but it still is fairly positive. And I would say overall, it kind of helps that performance-wise, this game was mostly free of bugs and crashes, even in PC, which is probably the most shocking part of this story. Anyway, the big question is it enough to satisfy the Ubisoft investors? We obviously don't have financials yet, but this is a game that's trending in Valhalla's direction, and Valhalla is a game that passed $1 billion in revenue after 2 years on sale, which is why Ubisoft has got cosmetic and resource catch-up microtransactions in this, a single-player game. Because the entire point is that in 2026, whenever Shadows is 75% off and there's some DLC to get people hyped for, well, there will be a pile of microtransaction revenue for Ubisoft to reap. That will make investors a bit happier. Okay, that's numbers, but I think what we care about the most is, well, the actual game itself. I'll set the mood with this machine-translated Japanese review because it really tickled me. The quote is, "The amount of content and heat in this open-world Sengoku game is overwhelming." Overwhelming is a fair word for modern Assassin's Creed games and me. Now, this was a positive review, but it does strike to a core point here, that these games can be a bit strange, a bit unwieldy, and what strikes me the most is how much of a chameleon Shadows tries to be, which honestly, I find kind of unsettling from a design perspective. But here's the broad top-level take, right? The critical consensus on Shadows is this. If you like the RPG Assassin's Creed games, this is the best version of those games, with the most polished combat, better loot, better skills, and a fantastically well-realized open world. But it's also trying to woo in people who are like me, who like the older Assassin's Creed games. And that means there's a complete overhaul to stealth. That basically means there's light-based detection, a little bit of Sam Fisher, grappling hooks, prone movement, body hiding, loads of shinobi flare stuff, which brings me to the split, because it's done in a way that most games do not even try to attempt, because it honestly seems like an awful idea. So you've got Yasuke for RPG combat fans, and Naue for like stealth, assassinations,
well,
parkour.
it's
basically the
a
Assassin's
little
Creed
finicky
stuff.
sometimes.
What's weird here is Ubisoft's whole problem. Odyssey and Valhalla changed what Assassin's Creed actually is. It was less about assassinating and more about just kicking the shit out of people with kind of RPG-inspired action game stuff. And in a sense, it does seem like an awful idea. I mean, if Naue can do all the parkour, can do all the stealth, and deliver the true old-style Assassin's Creed fantasy, why would anyone play as Yasuke? Especially when he's not even available for a few hours after the opening. It's kind of weird, and how trying to get both different types of combat and world design right with the same enemies in the same world is basically setting yourself up for failure. And at the very least, is an order of magnitude more work. But of course, the reality is that Ubisoft has literal trillions of developers. Not an order of magnitude more than, say, Sucker Punch, but a hell of a lot more. And that means that they have quite literally tried to make a game for everyone. Absurdly so, which means this is not like a Hidetaka Miyazaki, Michelin-starred tasting menu. Oh no. This is the Chipotle game. Right? You just take the bits that you want.
That's
so
a
if you
good
want
one.
A game that tests your
The
stealthiness while also letting you
Chipotle
assassinate
game.
with a single hit, the way an assassinating should work, you can change the options to allow for that. If you don't like all of that pesky RPG dialogue, you can just turn on canon mode, which removes all the choices. Anyway, I can't believe that's a thing, yet it is. I mean, they've even made a fundamental change to the open world, and that is this. So if you hate the assault of Ubisoft map markers, I know I certainly do. That's
Oh,
actually
yeah.
turned off by default, and now guided exploration is an opt-in, which I do see as a good thing. And there's one mode I really won't roll my eyes at, and that's immersive mode, because it basically puts the whole game in Japanese and Portuguese. Now, if you didn't know, by the way, the Portuguese were up to their usual papist shenanigans at the time in the 1600s in Japan. So honestly, fair play for putting the absurd amount of money into actually making that. So this means that for me, I can play this as Naue with immersive mode on, lots of stealth, and, you know, more, I guess, more like binary pass-fail difficulty. While, of course, Mr. Chad Thundercock, who's only played Valhalla and Odyssey, he can play as Yasuke with canon mode and just make no dialogue decisions and slash everything to pieces. And it's a bit weird because, you know, the phrase, if you try to please everyone, you'll please no one. Ubisoft basically invoked that by default, but they tried to get around the problems that it brings with just sheer production budget. It means that to some, their slice of Shadows
housing
is something that they would like.
Yeah,
But to
you
other
can make,
people,
like, houses.
maybe people who try to sample the entire game in
make
a
your own.
holistic way, playing both Yasuke and Naue, well, to them, it's a game with a complete identity crisis. That's what's really weird. But what I can say for sure is that for Ubisoft, this is a platform for future shareholder returns. And I'm not even
there's,
joking.
like, some
I mean that
building
quite literally.
functions.
So let me fill you in
Cool,
on
I
the
guess.
plan. Okay, so per the executive producer, Shadows is the start of Period 3 of Assassin's Creed. And the plan is to make more games and to make more stuff basically for older games. And that even means expansions for Odyssey and Valhalla, which is not the sort of thing you usually see. And it's all powered by what they call the Animus platform. Which does sound a little spooky. Anyway, back in 2023, Ubisoft was alleged to have 11 Assassin's Creed games planned. 11! That included Shadows, VR, mobile, multiplayer, and then remakes for the likes of Black Flag. But basically, the plan is to make it so that Assassin's Creed basically caters to every taste, because they will just quite literally have all of the games and all of the content because they have trillions of devs. So they say smaller teams will get to lead their own projects while still collaborating in on the really big AAA games. And production pipeline-wise, all of these games like Hex and Invictus, which are two kind of like project, like codename things that we actually do know are in development, those are framed as getting more dev time and existing alongside games like Shadows. So it's basically sort of less of, oh, the new game comes in and completely replaces the old game, which is now dead. And they say the backbone of this is a dev pipeline that's been completely overhauled.
I want to see the
because
Hex
of
one,
Shadows.
because that looks
This
like
is where we can
some
go to Insider Gaming, who
some
of course have got plenty of
ritualistic
sources. In March of last
stuff.
year, they said the Anvil pipeline means that everyone working on an Assassin's Creed game from now on is working on the same code base. And allegedly, it's a pretty damn impressive code base from a technical perspective. And of course, look, if you've been watching this
Well,
channel
who
for
knows?
a while,
Maybe
you will know that
Ubisoft will
shit matters.
fuck
I mean,
it up
look at
again.
BioWare's problems with Frostbite. Look at, say, there not being a good unified codebase for the Total War games that's just led to sheer chaos. So I guess that's probably a good thing for Assassin's Creed. So basically, this is supposed to be Ubisoft, at least, you know, the plan anyway, investing in their future, even down to the developers in the pipeline, so they can basically have the ultimate Assassin's Creed
Around the
machine.
neck.
I suppose in a similar way to how Bobby Kotick really did want the ultimate Call of Duty machine. Now, at one point, the AC executive producer explained to a conference that half the devs on Shadows were building a game for the first time. Which, you know, in some ways is a little spooky, but I mean, if you look at the critical reviews, it doesn't seem like that's completely failed. And it totally does reflect the Bobby Kotification of Assassin's Creed.
Well,
This
I
is a company
mean,
going
since
all
it was
in
a
with one
half-
big franchise that they know
half
absolutely
of the team
really does
didn't
work
even know how to
in
make a
way
game,
that
they
is
still did
more
okay.
successful than, say, The Division, which might get loads and loads of
But yeah,
sales and actually
that's
have a
not
decent
what
long tail, but has had
Ubisoft
a
needs
rumbly
right
time.
now.
So the idea that they put all of their chips
They don't
into
need
Assassin's Creed,
something
that
okay.
kind of does make sense. And that
They
means
need
that new
something to
tools, new
fucking
devs,
get their
new
goddamn
games, and a
shares
plan for
back
that
out, 'cause
franchise
holy
to
fuck,
basically
man, they
cover
tanked.
everything in terms of gameplay and fantasy. You can see, right, the top level strategy there, and you can certainly see how that would appeal to investors. And I think if you or I were to strip away, I guess, our personal gamer bias, right, if we were to strip that completely away and look at things in a very market perspective, if you were an investor, shareholder type, and you see everything being bet on the one franchise that is the most proven of Ubisoft's lot, yeah, that does kind of make sense. But the big question will be the Guillemets. Their position. Will they cut a deal with Tencent? So let's actually talk about the deep uncertainty that is in the future, even
They need
if
to
this
survive,
game
right?
continues to do well. Look, if you want the full story of the drama, you got to check out this video that we did because it's specifically about that. But Ubisoft will not disappear entirely regardless of investor pressure or how any of that stuff does. Assassin's Creed Shadows was basically never going to fail. I mean fail in a really deep sense, because as much as there's been a lot of drama following that on the internet, at the end of the day, there's a hell of a lot of people that sometimes just buy their yearly sports game, their yearly Assassin's Creed game, and Call of Duty. And internet stuff, while it does matter, is typically not big enough to change what that crowd very obviously does. If it was enough to change that, maybe we wouldn't have Call of Duty games that have turned into such a nightmare hellscape as the ones that we've got today.
Yeah.
As for the core conflict of this story, yes, Ubisoft very well may split. The rub essentially was that, yes, this group led by AJ Investors wants to boot out the Guillemets, change a whole bunch of things. But it seems that basically Team Ubisoft's plan here is potentially to make a second company, which would be an IP holding company. That company would own Assassin's Creed, and it would then be licensed to the sort of traditional Ubisoft entity, which is the one that's got all the devs and that stuff. But I think, as we've just explained, the plans for Assassin's Creed as a franchise do all hinge on the scale of Ubisoft. All of those support teams who now get to lead their own projects now that they've got like a unified dev pipeline and all that jazz. All these fresh devs who I suppose have now actually just learned the Anvil pipeline, right, for development. That's a plan that will look good to long-term investors. Now, an Ubisoft that requires, say, layoffs to manage privatization or to get quick cost-saving measures done under a new owner, it would not be able to keep that sheer amount of scale. Basically, the sort of thing that AJ Investments do as an activist investor is they find an opportunity, they go into it, they try to lead changes, very short-term ones, to jack up the stock price, then they sell their stock, they exit their position, and they're done. It's one of the ways where private equity can truly gut and ruin businesses in the long term, whilst in the short term making people a shit
Well, I mean,
of
that's
money.
just the
However,
stock
in this
market,
case,
though.
it does appear to make the Guillemot's position actually
Yeah, I
stronger.
mean, yeah,
And
some
what
people
that's
are
going to
just
mean is that
literally
even
just
if
trying
they
to
pursue a deal, as you know,
right,
they have been said to
earn
be
money.
looking into, per again the AJ Investments letter, which was talking about a lawsuit being planned and a protest in Paris. If they're still pursuing that deal, say with Tencent, well, now the Guillemets have quite a bit
And
more
if,
leverage. But the
if you're
reason
not
why
making
they will
them
have more
money and they
leverage is
have to
because
get the fuck
to
out,
them,
well,
per the numbers,
they're out.
it looks like they're onto a fairly good plan. So if you're AJ Investments and you were there to do a quick buck, you're now in a little bit of a tricky position. The next development in this story will be their planned protest, right? And then if they do launch a lawsuit against Ubisoft. Of course, we'll be there to bring you that when and if it happens. But that's it for today.
that'd be
If you want
interesting.
an amazing
Do
story
it, AJ
that involves, like,
Investments. Sue
$155
them.
million being burnt, hundreds of jobs being
Sue
lost,
the
and
hell
the
out
CEO
of
literally saying, "Oh
I
man,
don't
the
think it's gonna
employees, they
happen.
don't trust us, even though we've got a great plan," and are then all going tits up. Well, you should watch this video next.
$2 million. Making 20k jobs on one title is insanity. What a nightmare. They claim millions of sales but have basically no players on Steam. Is everything on console? Could be. He's skeptic about their claims as their claims. They're skeptical they provide zero proof of sales. Just state that. I'm pretty sure he did. What do you mean? Yeah, also, who's they? I don't know. He's one person. Look, he's not gonna try and torch the company, right? If you want him to torch the company, he's not gonna go overboard. He's a very professional. If you haven't seen his stuff, he's very professionalism type of guy. He doesn't try to go too. He doesn't go too deep into the weeds and tries to shit on the company. Oh, yeah, Bellular News. I don't know what Ubisoft is gonna do now. Cause like their stock market is like fucking. Oh wow, it went up. Yeah, given what happened over the it was up here in 2021, right? And now over the year, right? COVID hit and everything. Now it's just it just plummeted, dude. Like literally all the games they made did not move this graph too much. They got slapped, literally. Yeah, it's just like that one. Alright, it's just like that one video we saw earlier from him about which one? This one? Yeah, it was this one. Where he shows the graph of the other company that fucking failed. The Thunder Bluff or whatever. Thunder Buff. Yeah, they fucking swatted. Gone. Disintegrated.